Okay, yeah. So Jim, I wanted to have you on the show. Saw a great presentation just on micro conversions and building them into your strategy for long term, B2B or longer sales cycles, and just saw a lot of your presentations. And just head of paid media over there at Fountain, and over a decade in online marketing. So I wanted to get you on the show, just dive into specifically micro conversions and building them into the strategy.
I think micro conversions are a really interesting topic to explore, obviously, which is why I wanted to talk about them. But fundamentally, it's the small things that happen before the big thing that you really care about. So I think there can be a real hyper focus on leads, quality leads, and obviously if they then become a sale and generate revenue and profit and whatnot for the company, no matter what the industry or how long or short the sales cycle, you're right. Obviously, this would suit longer sales cycles a little bit more.
Yeah, and
But
it's
I think
overlooked by a lot of people too. They, like you said, they kind of go for lead generation, the most important lead at the very end, maybe a phone call, maybe a very long form, schedule a demo, book a sales call, something like that. Or e-commerce, obviously just going for the purchase and nothing else. But
no.
it just kind of dive into all the steps and how people can implement that. Even e-commerce or obviously B2B, longer sales cycles, there's so many little steps that happen leading up to the sale, or the sales call, or the in-person appointment, or demo, or something like that. It's critical for marketers to build all of that in for the entire process.
And I think the reason that we thought about this, I suppose, collectively at Fountain, but certainly one thing that really got my interest was this switch to GA4. So I
Yeah.
think that was the real reason that this kind of pushed this idea more, was because I loved the fact that GA4 is such a blank slate. I appreciate that comes with its own challenges, don't get me wrong, but I think the
Yeah, it's
fact
a
that it's
very
then
blank
basing
slate.
its, yeah,
Yeah.
it is, but you can then therefore make it as bespoke to your business as you need it to be, and therefore measuring all the different events that are important to you as a business, and then deciding and understanding which one of those you then want to choose as kind of conversion events, and then starting to kind of map out what that customer journey looks like, not just like you say from lead onwards, but then also before as well. And I thought that then starts to kind of answer that big challenge that we always have about justifying spend that isn't directly attributable to revenue, profit, ROI, etc., and where you're investing more in brand awareness or research consideration, or just phases of the customer journey where they're still looking and deciding who to talk to and whether they want to buy from, even buy the service, let alone buy from you. And I think this starts to build that picture of justifying why you should invest in that, or at least that was the vision behind it, a data-led vision of that. So I think that's what I really love about doing this. And you can keep it really simplistic if you don't have a huge amount of data, but the bigger the or the more traffic you're getting to the site and the more sessions you're getting, I think the more you can build on it and make it more complicated. And then you can do other stuff with it too, like audiences and, like I say, sequenced audiences and events and whatnot. So I think it's got quite a lot of different possibilities depending on how complex you want it to be, which I think is quite interesting as well.
Yeah, and from a PPC standpoint, there's a lot of different touch points, and you could do this with a smaller budget, but definitely a larger budget. You can have all different campaigns for branding, top of funnel. Maybe some are just gathering emails, or some are going for free trial signups for software or something like that, or for e-commerce, add to cart, or there's so many things built in. I guess let's just kind of dive in. I kind of hit a few of them just now. I guess we'll split it for lead generation and e-commerce. What are the specific ones that people should be building into their campaigns? I guess, do you want to start with e-commerce or lead generation? What those micro
Start
conversion?
with start with maybe start with ecom, because it's
Okay.
probably the most I say the most obvious. It's probably the most obvious, but maybe not. But you've mentioned a few of them, which is during the checkout process. Obviously, all of those make sense, and we already had like checkout funnels. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a huge change from that. But I think it's when you start to factor in how many, product page views, category views, how many of them are they looking at?
Yeah.
And then you start to build on like how they're engaging with those product pages. So are they watching product videos? Like which elements are they then doing that? And then depending on, I suppose, the number of products and the size of the company, you might want to either group, I guess depending on how granular you get, depends on how much data you have and how much you would find it useful. But I guess that kind of starts to tell you how people are engaging with the pages that you're sending traffic to, and then ultimately gives you more of a view of what needs or what levers you could pull to then improve the page, to then get better conversion, to then make your PPC campaigns work more effectively. So I think
Yeah.
certainly at a very basic level, I think just all of the elements on the page, things like newsletter signups as well, depending if you've got like an offer. So it's quite common with e-commerce that people have an offer for new signups, but just making sure that you're measuring signups to that, and then how many people then go on to then engage with product pages and content. I mean, you can obviously, depending on the company and how much blog or, sort of useful FAQ type content you've got, and it depends on the nature and the value of the purchase as well. Because I think if it's, say, for example, you were spending, I don't know, £5,000, something like that on a watch, or a lot of money on a watch, you're probably more likely to spend a lot of time researching and a lot of time absorbing and consuming content on that
Hmm.
site or around that brand. If you're buying a £10 pair of socks, you're probably going to not go to quite the same extent of research that you might do. So I think depending on that element of your business as well, depends on how deeply you would measure engagement with content on site as well, and how much you care about that. Again, it's just thinking for smaller businesses, they might not have the ability to add lots and lots of content on site. And so I think it's just understanding what you've got at your disposal, and what sorts of things people will start to do. And almost, if you can, measure as much of it as you can, and then kind of start to chip away at which ones are actually, people are actually, which events are being triggered, I guess, and then build out a kind of map of which ones of those are going to be more important to you. But they're the ones I would start with, I think, on a fundamental basis.
Yeah, and I think the smaller ones, you mentioned a pair of socks, there's still some optimizing to be done there. I mean, you could go look at a bigger brand or Amazon or something and just look at their page in general, maybe a bunch of bullet points, are they breathable, kind of what sizes and colors, and just the basics on there. Expand out, the product description and the different selling points, 100% cotton, or what they're made out of, or if there's some unique selling point of how they're sourced, or a lot of them do. If you buy this product, we'll donate something to a charity, or plant a tree, or all different things like that. It's a unique selling point even for a pair of socks. Kind of, you can get them anywhere, but well, this one makes donations, or this one, every one you buy, I forget what shoe company does that. You buy a shoe there and they donate a shoe. It's a 50-50 one.
Is it
Um,
Tom?
yeah, I think so, actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that one, I mean, shoes are a little more expensive, but something like that, it's just one little thing that makes it pop a lot more. They're not going to research it as much as a $5,000 watch, but just optimizing the description and that page can go a long way.
Yeah, I think you're really right. And I think it really depends on the business model that, the company is working with. Because if it's a higher volume, lower average order value type model, where you need to sell more, or they can sell less, but they're higher value products, it, like you say, it does depend, but it's still as important. But I think it's an interesting message, because I think what you need to do is make sure that you're thinking about landing page experience and web
Yeah.
experience as much as you are about the traffic that you're sending to the site, because that's the way to do your job as a PPC more effectively, is to think outside of your tunnel of just Google ads, Microsoft ads, and social or whatever channels you're using. I think it's the next step is being as clever as you can to use that to then understand how you can make improvements to improve the conversion rate and make your campaigns work more effectively, make the investment work harder, can't you? So
Yeah, and GA4 has some of that built in with, it used to be more advanced marketers could do this with code, but now some of that's built in, with scroll. And that's something that just, or time on the page, well, that one's a little more customization, but did they scroll to the bottom? Did they read the description? Even watch a video. Not everybody has the resources to do that, but just a simple product video or something like that. Even that could help with e-commerce. Maybe it's scrolled to the middle or the bottom. The video, it can track that, and even socks. Maybe it's not for every single sock, or maybe it's about the company and how they make things, and showing their people, and a nice about us page, or every sock you buy they donate a sock. Maybe a simple video. Are people watching that? Or the add to cart, abandoned cart, that sort of thing. There's so much that can be done with e-commerce as far as micro conversions go.
yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's one of the beauties, I guess, of GA4 in some respects is, like you said, there's a bit more when it comes to out the box events, and that might involve some configuration in Google Tag Manager, but it feels a bit more accessible, like you
Yeah.
said, to people to be able to measure engagement with content on the site and some other elements as well. So I think understanding that kind of hierarchy of automated events and enhanced events and those sorts of things as well can really help. And then you can get more complex. So again, the event
Yeah.
parameters are where you can add those extra layers of detail depending on what you need and what you feel is appropriate and how much data you're getting, how many sessions you're having come to the site. I think that can make a difference as well. So you can then understand in more granular detail and group the product pages and get more of a sense of that if it's relevant. But yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely got huge applications for e-commerce, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned different products and topics. I guess from a more technical standpoint, how do you split that up? I'm assuming kind of going, well, just tracking micro conversions, and then that's a potential for a remarketing audience. So how would you technically categorize that? Like, viewed more than one product, kind of like that's an
You
audience.
can, yeah, you could do, yeah. So I think you could do it in terms of the volume of page views or even
Yeah.
scroll depth and video views, and you can kind of then, depending on what you feel is relevant, you could go down that road, or you could alternatively maybe using that custom the kind of parameters, I guess, the event parameters. You could probably start to think about grouping products together as well. So that's when I guess you could maybe look at products that have, say, all of your socks, for example, that are red. If you have that significant number of products, I guess if you think about it, similar to the custom labels that you might apply in a merchant feed, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that the data you'd get back from it, I mean, it's always that argument, isn't it? If depending on the number of products that you have, so we're probably talking about businesses that have thousands of products where this would help
Yeah.
them. Because for a lot of businesses, they probably don't have that volume of data and that size of merchant feed to care about that stuff. But I think that's where it could get interesting, where it's almost like there's so much data, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to do with it. And that's where I think you can group almost, I would argue, use those event parameters in a similar way to custom labels. And you could then get some different views on how people are then engaging with those different elements, with those parameters. But I think like I said, I'd almost start simple rather than going completely mad. I'd almost get a sense of, are you getting significant enough data on a really kind of simple view, and then start to add more events as you start to understand where you are. I think otherwise you could sink a lot of time into something which ultimately is nice to know, but doesn't change how you're going to approach your marketing strategy. And I think that's always a danger, isn't it, with these things where it's how long is a piece of string? How complicated do
Yeah.
I make it? And I probably err on the side of go for the big important things that you think are going to be impactful, like engagement, like you said, time on page and scroll depth and video views and the checkout funnels and content and FAQs and all the real fundamentals, and then start to add layers of complexity later down the line, I think.
Yeah, and I think it needs to scale with the volume. If it's, a couple thousand a month on PPC, you really can't segment it that much. When you get into 100,000 a month or even 1 million a month for a very large enterprise account, that's when you have enough data to break all that up. But I mean, majority of businesses somewhere around maybe 5,000 a month, 20,000 a month, which sounds like a lot, but as far as online advertising budget, that's not really enterprise. Even 20,000 a month to segment every little thing. It's just video views, scroll depth, how many pages, page views. Keep it, even that would still keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right because, like you said, you'd need to be spending a lot of money. Like you said, 100,000, a million a month to really start to get any data. And like I said, with most businesses of that size, the challenge is always using the limited resources that they have available in the best way possible. And obviously, there's always a happy medium, isn't there? So I think that sounds like a good and sensible way to approach it.
Yeah, and there's some good options there just to see. And that's when you usually go back as far as when you launch a new campaign. Okay, is there any potential? There's no sales yet, but how long are they on the site? Did they view multiple pages? Did they watch the video? Sign up for coupons or newsletter in sense of e-commerce or maybe scroll depth. Just there's hundreds of clicks. Is there any potential here? Or add to cart, obviously. That's the obvious one. And see, for a newer campaign, no sales yet, but is this a good audience kind of thing? I think you can gauge it with that too.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think again, depending on I know sort of mentioned this before, but I think some of the explorations in GA4 start to give you a sense of how events interlink with each other.
Yeah.
So naturally, you would expect things like how long someone spends on a page and how far they scroll down the page. They're obviously interlinked intrinsically, but depending on some of those other things may not be. So you might find that somebody who spends, I don't know, 2 minutes on your site and views a certain amount of pages and all of those lovely things, they may not necessarily sign up for your newsletter,
Yeah.
but equally there may be a really strong correlation between those things. And I think there are a variety of explorations that can help you to at least start to piece that together. And I think when you talk about audiences, that's where you could start to create audiences of people who've done one, two, three of those things, and start to create some sequences, and not necessarily in an order, but just I care about people who've done these three things or two things or five things or however many. So
Yeah.
I think that can be quite an interesting push. And you mentioned about optimization. You can create a conversion event from those audiences, which again, if you're optimizing a campaign to sales and it's not quite working, but you are seeing that, like you said, it's generating other events, or it's leading to perhaps some things that are important to you but aren't quite people who aren't quite ready to buy. You could optimize towards something like a sequence of events or something like that, which could be a good way of measuring how engaged those users are if you didn't want to, and then how likely they are to then lead on to the sale. So I think there's interesting ways of using it that can take it to the next level as well.
Yeah, or adjusting that campaign, maybe do a smaller percentage of the budget is just kind of top of funnel, but GA4, like those fractions of conversions that have started, well, not started, but I guess somewhat recent, the fractions, you get, 22 and a half conversions. It's showing it was part of multiple touch points. So these other campaigns, top of funnel, if they're viewing a lot of pages and all these other things, maybe keep that as a first touch point, since it's not getting sales, but not necessarily pause it because you have those extra insights to see it is
Yeah,
adding some value.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So I think that's pretty good. A couple of bullet points for e-commerce. I personally think lead gen is going to be the more complicated one, and where people might want to implement a lot more micro conversions. So let's dive into that. What are your thoughts on how people can use micro conversions for lead generation?
So I think lead generation is an interesting one because I agree in there are arguably more things that you can measure, but then I think you've got the added challenge of generally speaking, and obviously that's a huge generalization, the volume of traffic that you're going to get to the site is probably lower.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to find less people. So therefore, your segmentation might be more challenging. In the same way, with remarketing lists, creating remarketing lists in a really segregated way can be quite challenging if your audience sizes aren't meeting the minimums that you need for various different ad platforms. So I think there's that to overlay. But on a real fundamental level, because with B2B, you've got, if we think about even starting with leads, so like a webinar registration or an event sign up or a form fill, a contact form fill, a phone call, newsletter sign up, all these, I mean, there's probably lots and lots that I've obviously not covered. But if
Yeah.
you even start with the fact that the breadth of ways that you can contact a B2B company or register some level of interest, a lead gen form on, LinkedIn or Meta, any of these things, they're indications of interest, but they're also vast. And depending on the business and the company, they may well have completely different lead to sale conversion rates, completely different values, completely different, levels of engagement. So I think if you start with measuring all of those really important things and then looking at things like engagement, content engagement, I would argue may well be, I say more important, depends on what the
Yeah.
content is. Arguably, people are going to be doing significant amounts of research because invariably these B2B purchases are going to be higher value. There's going to be a lot of stakeholders as well.
Hmm.
So I think the interesting thing here is starting to try and understand the difference in engagement between different people, which is obviously hugely challenging. But I think I would start with all the different lead types and then kind of work backwards and look at things like video views, content engagement, and just try and understand more about what people are actually doing, because, and I guess the other thing is naturally, I mean, this is the same with any business, they're going to be doing research off your site, but the
Yeah.
more research you can encourage them to do on your website, the more you can measure what they're doing and what they're engaging with. So I think there is an argument for investment in content and video and anything that's going to help them to understand what you do, why it's beneficial for them, and then ultimately why they should choose you. So I think it's that content engagement piece that's going to be really crucial here, and allowing people to get in touch in a soft way. But then also, I think there's the whole, I suppose, email and lead nurturing bit that I think you kind of want to almost look at the other part of the customer journey more here, I think, because the that initial registering of an interest, if someone signs up for a newsletter, they might not be ready to speak to you for 6 months, 9 months, a
Yeah.
year. I mean, it depends, you're talking a lot more long term, aren't you? So it's a bit more of an interesting situation to try and map out, isn't it? It's going to be a lot more challenging, I think.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and dive into those. It hit a lot of different points. I think um, for a longer sales cycle, I guess I'll back up real quick. Just make a side note of when not to do it when it's not a sales cycle. Off the top of my head, home services, you just call. Plumbing, HVAC, most things for repair, especially repairs. That one, something's broken, you call. You don't really want an ebook, you don't want a newsletter, you don't want a video. Something's broken, you
Yeah,
call. It's like a one day
yeah,
sales cycle.
that's very true.
Whereas maybe a kitchen remodeling, that one you might download a brochure, watch a video, look at before and after pictures, and that might be a lot of touch points before you book a consultation for someone to come out in person to your home and give you a large quote. That that's not repairs, that's more remodeling, or windows or flooring or putting in a pool, or that's a completely different thing for the home. So you have to know when there's a long sales cycle and when there isn't, and that one actually isn't always obvious. I have seen ones where, here, download a PDF, it's like, this is a 1 day sales cycle, why are you trying to make it longer? Whereas the other ones that you mentioned, it makes a lot more sense to, okay, you don't want to call yet, you don't want to book a consultation. Here's a micro conversion, something else that will keep you in mind for 6 months or a year down the road. And I think that's what a lot of people should definitely implement and track.
Yeah. And I think if it comes to software, I think it's the demo, which is always an
Yeah,
interesting one as well. It's that balance, isn't it? Of, do you offer a free trial? Do you show people a demo?
yeah,
And then, like, I guess again, there's going to be a lot of nuance in terms of testing what works for your business model, let alone what you're measuring for your marketing. So I think that, even when I think about from a personal point of view, and I think about, when you get a connection request on LinkedIn from somebody who's clearly worked for a software company, and within about 5 seconds, if you do happen to accept because you think it might be interesting, they've messaged you, they've emailed you, you've got, and I guess it's and sometimes that's usually when people want to demo you of something. Um, but I always think I'd love to dig into, it's always, I find it really fascinating to then dig into, how are those demos working? Do you find it's more effective to actually offer a free trial? Like,
yeah,
how long is the free trial? Like, because we've toyed with lots of different, as an agency, we've looked at lots of different software ourselves, and it does help to have a demo when there's so
yeah.
many people involved, and you can then build a good use case for that thing. But equally, I understand people don't always make use of their free trials, and it can be, so it's always an interesting one. But I think there is that extra layer of fun, isn't there, when actually it comes down to what's working for your business, you know, and then what you want to measure. But
Yeah, and I think there's the obvious one, just free trial signups, demo signups, or downloaded something, in exchange for an email, a PDF, a brochure, ebook, how to, tips. They're all generally the same category, and that's easy to check in analytics or connect it back to Facebook, LinkedIn, Google. It's, you can see those actual conversions and cost per free trial. But I think interesting thing on a higher level, if you have the budget, even mid-sized companies, these have to be connected to CRMs, either HubSpot, Active Campaign, I'm forgetting 50 others, but they can track if someone signs up, did they come back to the site and what page did they go to? They can monitor after a sign up all the activities the person did. So you can do free trial and then back to the website and then watched a video and then read your blog and then booked a demo or something like that. Those higher level CRMs that track everything after a sign up, I think those have to be connected, and an email follow up, just so many things outside of ads, those have
yeah,
to be done. Nurture campaigns, email nurture is what you said.
yeah. But this, I think you're completely right. I think that's where having I think particularly in this case, like you say, having a CRM and connecting, pushing that data into, into ads, or GA4, I think is extremely useful, isn't it? And it helps to build the full picture of what's going on and how everything connects together. So, yeah, I think that's definitely where it's more important. But I guess with consent mode and all of the things that are kind of being pushed forward, I think it's going to be, no matter whether you're an e-commerce, a B2B, or whatever you do, I think it's probably best to connect your CRM and push that data in regardless, because it'll be the most accurate source of data that you have. So I think that's probably a good recommendation generally. But yeah, I agree that the breadth of things that you can get from a CRM is going to be more for a B2B than it will be for an e-com, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's useful outside of just Google Ads, and the sales team can look at, or the sales manager, marketing manager can look at, when you're spending money, how many free trials signed up, and then of course how many free trials turned into paid, or how many people that downloaded a white paper later scheduled a call with the sales team and booked an appointment with the person to demo the product, or in person, however the sales team is set up. And that's something that without data outside of all the different platforms, that's difficult to say. Otherwise, we had 500 free trials. Well, it seems obvious, but how many turned into paid? And not everyone tracks that properly, which is critical. It sounds crazy, but I mean, these missing things are how you decide on ultimately the ROI from the ads.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's also making sure that you're tracking these things as accurately as you can and understanding what they're measuring. So I think one of the points you made is that some of the out the box events with GA4, I think depending on it will measure an 100% scroll depth or something of that
Yeah.
like even if you can't actually really scroll on the page. So I think it's just important to understand what these events are measuring and what it's telling you, and just making sure they're as accurate as possible, because I think that's where you're going to get the most value from it. I think accuracy is obviously challenging, but definitely trying to get as close as you can to that would be the best thing to do, wouldn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, and the emails, most free trials, when you get close to it expiring, I mean, you get one or two emails a day that with the good ones. It's about to expire. Do you want to set up a call? You're going to lose it. They just so many emails. It is how it should be done. When it's about to expire, that would be an example of connecting your emails to the micro
Yeah.
conversions from your ads, which is critical.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think that's where, as we said earlier, like looking outside of what you're doing and understand how it connects and fits into everything that the business is doing. Definitely if you're an agency, if you're an in-house team, then I think achieving that is going to be more, hopefully anyway, is going to be more, I wouldn't say easy, but it will be hopefully simpler. But I think it's challenging for anyone, but I think it's important to look outside of just paid advertising, if that's what you're doing, as a focus, and making sure that you are taking into account even the things like email that are outside of your control, so that the business gets the most value from it. I think that's definitely, like you say, definitely really, really important.
Yeah, what would you say are one of the top micro conversions for lead generation? I mean, there's not always a perfect answer, but probably one of the most important ones that the people should be doing, not just the most important, the really long the form or phone call. What's something people should be doing for lead gen as far as micro conversions?
I think it comes back to that content engagement piece. So I think it's probably around the volume of content people are reading, how long well, it's always tricky when it comes to length of time because it can be idling and whatnot,
Yeah,
but how long people have been, how long and how far they've scrolled down the page. And I guess just a measure of somebody who's actually finding your content useful. If that's what you want them to do, of course, there might be an argument that if they're spending a long time on the page, then maybe there's a problem or they don't understand what you're trying to tell them. So I guess but measuring content engagement, I think would be absolutely key to understanding if you're saying the right thing to the right people. And like I said, interpreting that data in the correct way. But that would be, I would say, a really important place to start for B2B. And then kind of obviously overlay that with your leads and your webinars and your newsletter sign-ups, so your demos and all of that stuff. But I think understanding, like I said, what that data is telling you. So thinking about where that content engagement is going to lead, and whether, like I said, you want someone to be reading it in depth. If it's a really short article and they're spending ages on there, you sort of have to question why,
true.
and maybe it's not right. So I think obviously with a layer of common sense in there, I think that's where I would definitely start. And if you've got video, if you've got a complex B2B like SaaS product, video is always great because it's an easy way to explain what you do. So again, if it's more video than content that you've got on site, then same theory, but for video. So how much of a video someone's watched, and generally going for the higher percentages if you're looking for somebody who's fully engaged, I think.
Makes sense. Do you think you should have it gated? For people that don't know that term, just you have to give your email, maybe not phone number and things like that, to watch the video or to download something or other, or just have it right there on the page and track how many people watch the video.
So that's a really good question. And I think that's a really big debate, isn't it? Gated versus ungated content.
Depends on who you ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a really good marketing answer with it depends, but I honestly think a bit of both. To be honest with you, depending on the situation, people get frustrated if all your content's gated, and
Yeah, that's
sometimes
true.
it depends how detailed the piece of content is. Like if you're asking someone to give their information in exchange for that report or that paper, I think it's got to be pretty good. So
Yeah.
and it's got to be pretty detailed. If you, I mean, I appreciate I'm a marketer, so I'm always a little bit more dubious about giving my details, I suppose, to some degree, unless I really want you to have them.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it has to be good enough for me to want to give my details. So if you're going to do it, you need to invest a lot of time. If it's just an article and it's a bit more generic and it's somebody who's early on in their journey, then they're probably you probably need to leave it ungated. So I think it depends on the stage of the customer journey, the quality of the content that you're producing, and also how much of it and whether, because maybe a bit of both will work. But I think having everything gated or everything ungated, you're probably not going to get the value from it if it's all ungated. But then if it's all gated, then perhaps some important people might not ever see your content.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably the approach that I would take personally.
I think that could be a good A/B test to just when you're sending a lot of traffic to it. Or I actually saw this is somewhat new as well. It's a hybrid of the two. I don't know if you've seen this. It's kind of a new trend. You'll have a video, and some video players, the technology where you embed a video, it can have a form or a button on top of the video. Wistia does this. I'm not sure if Vimeo has started this, but I've seen it. Maybe it's a 5-minute video, and somewhere at 2 minutes, they reference a document, a case study, something useful, and the video will pause and say, for your email, we'll send you the thing we just referenced in the video. So it's kind
Okay.
of kind of pops up like right in the middle of the video. We'll pause it, give us your email for something of value. And it does have the option to say no. Kind of, no, I don't want that, and continue to video, and it will unpause it.
Yeah.
So that way you can have a combination of the two, and
Wow.
you can, do you want more information? You want a book appointment, or the thing that he just referenced in the video, you can get that in your email here, yes or no. That way you can do a bit of both with the new technology. I've seen that popping up more and more, and I like that. I don't like the free training, free webinar, free something or other, give us your email. It's like, why is it always gated? Or can you at least show me part of the video? I don't even know if I like it. And this one, it's like,
Yeah,
here's 2 or 3 minutes, or some of them will stop and say, give us your email to watch the rest. It's like, well, it's really good, so I'll give you my email.
like
So
that.
you have a
Yeah.
hybrid of the two.
Yeah, I like that approach. That sounds really, like you say, really good because I think, like you say, unless you can demonstrate the value you're going to get, you are going to be, and people are going to get more and more savvy when it comes to sharing their data, and they're going to understand more and more that I think unless they really want something, then they'll give you their details, whereas otherwise, and I think that's going to become more prevalent as people become more, like I say, more exposed to that kind of marketing, whether in their work life or in their day-to-day life. I think that's probably going to make people be more cautious about that as well, like you said. So it's a really good compromise. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and some of them have done a very good job with it. Maybe they'll do 5 or 10 minutes, get some free training or something. It's like, do you want more training? Give us your email. We'll send you more videos. Or this is 10 minutes of an hour-long presentation. The first 10 minutes were great. It's like, you know what? I do want to see the rest. I'll give you my email, rather than it's an hour-long video and give us your email to watch any of it. So, well, I don't even know if it's good, and you're going to bombard me, or the phone number. I think that's a huge mistake, to ask for the phone number for something for free. Because, I mean, as a marketer, I spot that. And then I think most people spot that, here's, go to the free webinar, get the free ebook, training, something or other, but give us your phone number. It's like, well, then your salespeople are going to call me, and I just wanted to check this free thing. I think the phone number on free stuff should be a definite no.
I think some people, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. I agree because you know what's going to happen. Like you say, you know you're going to get a call and
Yeah.
invariably you really want one. So I'm I'm much the same. But I do wonder if you put the phone number in, if somebody does share it with you and it's their actual phone number, then they must be quite keen to have whatever it is for free. So I
True.
guess there's two ways of looking at it. You'll get a lot less, you will get a lot less form fills. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
two ways about it. And it might be that the quality of those form fills may be better, but I kind of can't help but think that those days have gone where people will share their phone number without second without second guessing why you want it. So I agree with you. I think times have moved on. Maybe if you'd have asked that question 5 years ago, the answer might have been quite different. But I think these days, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think if you are gonna ask for something for free, maybe just do the email, or nothing. Like you said, just track if they read it, if they watched the video and do nothing, or maybe just an email. Which people, I'm interested enough. I think a phone number, it's like, well, you might as well just book a call. If you're very interested, just fill out the
This is true.
much longer form with your phone number and book an appointment and give us a bunch of details, what you're looking for, and talk to a salesperson. Because if you're really interested, it's like, yes, I want to talk to a salesperson. I'm interested in buying it, and you don't want to hold people back from that either.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. That is very, very true. What a fun balancing act you've got to go through to get this right,
Yeah,
hey?
testing, constant testing. This is someone's job to just, let's test the
Yeah.
email. How did that go? Let's remove the email and see how many people watched the video. Let's see how that went. And so on. This is somebody's full time job. This is our full time job to just look at it. And they should and keep testing new things. Don't just blindly, let's do an email for a video. It's like, did anyone actually do that? And if it didn't, switch it. Try the free trial, I'd say no phone number and email, and watch the video, and just constantly test new things, especially for lead gen or e-commerce. Don't forget about that too. Um, let's see. Any other ones we missed for lead generation, for micro conversions?
I don't think so, no. I mean, there's infinite amounts, but I
No.
actually think the crossover between the two is probably more than you'd think. So I think that gives you a really good starting point to get going with it. And then depending on other things that take place on the site, you might want to overlay some other things. But yeah, I think that's a good, good starting point, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of great takeaways for both e-commerce and lead generation, just building in micro conversions and tracking them with GA4. Now it's a lot easier, a lot more touch points. Marketers should definitely build that in. A lot of people only do the very end, not all the micro conversions. Just great insights on that. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that. Really good information. Thank you for that.
No worries, no problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so how can people reach out to you and find you online?
Just they can find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
so connect with me on LinkedIn. Um, I think I've got an orange top on in my picture and probably don't look a huge amount like I do now, but hopefully you should be able to find me. But if you just search me at Fountain or visit fountainpartnership.co.uk, visit our website, and you can connect with me there as well.
All right, great. Yeah, I'll put a link in the description below. And thanks so much again for your time. This is really great insights.
No worries, great. Thanks very
All right,
much.
have a good day.
Cheers.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.